All right, you maggots, listen up. You know, at one point, I've been working with the toroid coils for different circuits, and I realized at some point that nobody ever wrote a book on toroid coils, like building a switching supply, maybe a strobe light using a toroid coil, maybe an RF amp using a toroid coil, maybe a mixer, maybe an oscillator, like I've done. I've done Franklin oscillator. And I'm thinking somebody put all that together in a book and show you how to do. I got to think of Balaam coils for shortwave antennas that use a toroid coil inside. Now you can find all those things as separate articles. So let's call toroid coils the information as splintered. So it hit me in my mind. Let me go to kits and parts, parts and kits. I always tell you about Toroid's info. When you go on there, there's a place you can click, and it's the guy that runs that web page that you can put in the values and all that. It's kits and parts, whatever. But anyway, I emailed him and I asked, is there a definitive book on toroid coils? Now, you got to remember, he sells kits of toroid coils, but they're set up for mostly ham radio. So he did give me 3 books to look into. Now, the first book had no mention of toroid coils at all. The second one is Solid State Designs for the Radio Amateur. So here we are. Remember I told you, Radio Amateur's Handbook. You'll find Doug Demore, whatever his name is. You'll find him in the Radio Amateur's Handbook. But his Solid State Designs for the Radio Amateur. That's one book. You're going to see oscillators, mixers, maybe Balaam coils. I don't know. You're going to have to look up what you want to do with a toroid coil and then get the information that way. You're not going to be able to get like an encyclopedia book on toroid coils. It doesn't exist. Then the other one is Experimental Methods in RF Design. That one there has more of the same, similar circuits to the Radio Amateur's Handbook. I mentioned 1981. It's available as PDF. Both the solid state designs for the radio amateur and experimental methods in RF design, also free on the internet as PDFs. He said it's possible. He said one's available through Amazon, but they might be out of date books, but they are available in archives on the internet as PDFs. So what you got to do is you have to decide what do you want to use a toroid coil for, and then work backwards that way. You know, you're not going to be able to buy a book and get a set of coils and then say, oh, I'd like to build a switching supply today, or I want a strobe light for my bicycle, or you know, you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to have to. I want to build a strobe light for my bike, strobe light bike, toroid coil. You might be able to find it that way. That's how it's going to be. There is no definitive book. I went to the Toroid King. See, I spent many hours searching for a book that I could just show you. And I found it, Radio Amateur's Handbook, 1981, online. And that's the book I kept going over when I got into toroid coils. And then there was some other article I can't seem to find that said, how do you tell what the toroid coil is? And I told you, they say put 10 turns of wire on it, hook it up to inductive reader, inductive meter, and it'll tell you with 10 turns, and then you can at 10 turns you get so many microhenries, and you know at 10 and you want 100. So if it's 10 microhenries at 10 turns, 100 turns will be approximately 100 microhenries. So you're gonna have to do a little deduction if you get into coils, which I've done. But I really thought that somewhere out there, somebody has had the same thought I had and said, you know what, let me write a book and explain different toroid coils. They didn't do it. I've done it on YouTube videos because I know it's an empty spot or a void. And the same thing goes for years ago. I was in tech school, and the instructor said, one of the fields you'll never be able to get into, and you'll never be able to find any real information, is television antennas. And he said they're out in the desert with these things, And if you know about a television antenna, some of the elements direct the signal to the antenna. Some of them are in the back of the antenna. They're reflectors, and they keep signal from coming in through the back of the antenna and giving you ghosts to some degree. Now, all the different elements basically go into resonance when you change the channel of your television set. Because you got to remember, years ago, a television set uh, had different bands. You know, two through 5 was one band, and then 7 through 13 was another band. I might jump at 8. Well, anyway, the antenna had to be for 2 different bands. All the frequencies for television weren't all in a row. FM was in between the low band and the high band, I believe, somewhere in there, which causes trouble now with the new high definition antennas, not DirecTV. I'm so tired from reading so much today, and of course the Alzheimer's is creeping up on me. But in other words, there is no definitive book, and I told you about these 3 books now, and you're going to see they're very similar. You're going to be able to build oscillator coils for receivers. You're going to be able to use them for RF amplifiers, Balun coils if you get into Balun coils of antennas. But, you know, as far as if you want a switching supply, you're going to have to go look at a toroid for switching, and then you'll find an article, and you might be able to locate the toroid coil. A lot of these articles, the guy says, I pulled the toroid coil out of a switching supply for a computer. Good luck finding that toroid coil. See, what I try to do is I try to tell you, use this coil blank ferrite because this is what's available. This is what I use. Other people, they build a one of, and then they're telling you they found it. And then, of course, you'll start collecting the parts. You won't be able to get the one part, and then it'll go in a drawer somewhere. I told you I learned all this. But I went to the Toroid King, and I explained, you know, what I was doing. He did answer me. He did give me 3 books. One of them had basically the same diagrams as in the radio amateur handbook, but it didn't mention the coils. And then the other 2 books did mention coil numbers, and it's the same idea as the radio amateur handbook. It's just that it gives you a couple more circuits. You know, the ones in the radio amateur handbook, that's the way to go. Now, my Franklin oscillator that I built, I found that on the internet. And like I made a video mocking people that don't want to go look for anything. See, when I go looking for something, I find other things. And then I bookmark it, I make notes off to the side, and it leads to somewhere. Well, other people, they want to be spoon-fed, and they never finish the project, and they never learn anything because they didn't do the due diligence or the work. I just want to tell you, I did go a little further on this, and I'm starting to realize that I did find the honey hole for toroid coils, and it's the Radio Amateur's Handbook from 1981. And then as you get to more modern radio amateur handbooks, everything becomes surface mount. That's a year where they were still using regular components and telling you how to wind a coil, and it's free. It's a PDF. It's a neat book to go through. They do show how to make power supplies in there. There's a lot in there. Even though it's for ham radio, it's got a lot of information. And I bought it, I think I bought the one in 1976, 75, 76. It was a hardcover. I bought it at, Wayne Electronics? No. State Electronics? No. Oh, man, it's the one on Route 46 Electronics. You walked in, the guy that ran the back parts cabinet, the parts section, he was a radio amateur, and he made sure they had the radio amateur handbook in there, hardcover, softcover. He had satellite books, how to receive the satellite, goes 9 as they come over the house. I've done all that. I made a zip zap antenna, and using a scanner, I was able, and my spinning drum set up for AM, not for FM, and I was able to fax a picture of the satellite as it came over my house. And it did have the Doppler shift in it. It was an experience in itself. See, I told you, anytime I would see something, I had to build it. And a lot of times I really suffered like when I showed you my spinning drum fax machine. Originally, all the articles try to get you to go get an old fax machine and take the motors out of it. You couldn't find them. They were non-existent. Uh, and I used stepping motors. I created my own way around the problem, and that's what I do. But I did find sort of the honey hole. I told you about it now. I'm telling you again. Radio Amateur's Handbook, 1981. There's a lot of little articles and hints about toroid coils. I think that's it. All right, that's it. I'm so tired. I'm so tired.